Brent.
Great.
Thank
Well,
you.
welcome everyone. This is the sixth session of the ITRC community practice. A whole bunch more people will be joining us, I'm sure. Before we get started, I want to, whoops, nope, that. I want to go back. Well, we'll not worry about that. Before we get started, I want to thank again the co-sponsors of the community practice, including the American Public Health Association, which is providing the continuing ed credits and allowing Neely to serve as an intern on the program, doing a lot of the work, and the Campaign for Trauma-Informed Policy and Practice, and Jesse Kohler, who is doing the technical aspects of it, and all the other co-sponsors, including the Trauma Resource Institute, which is a co-sponsor, and Elaine Miller-Karras, who's the co-founder and now the Director of Innovation for the Trauma Resource Institute, and also a ITRC founding member, is joining us today. So I want to thank all of those. Today we're going to focus on, I can't get the slideshow to go backwards, so I apologize, but today we're going to focus on the third foundational area that the ITRC research determined was going to be needed to build population level capacity for mental wellness and transformational resilience for the climate emergency, and that is to develop universal literacy about mental wellness and resilience, and we're going to explain what that means. And one of the best people that can be involved with this is Elaine Miller-Karras, and I'm just really honored, and thank you, Elaine, for joining us here today. So as we've done with all the other sessions, let's start with the resilience pause. And this time, you're going to learn a bunch of other resilience skills and practice them and learn how to teach them today. But this time, let's start with belly and chest deep breathing. So we'll just spend a few moments on this, but if you would, just find a comfortable position and then just start to breathe in through your nose and let your belly fill with air. And then breathe out through your nose as well. And if you're willing, just put one hand on your belly and the other hand on your chest. And as you breathe in, feel your breath, your belly rising. And as you breathe out, feel your belly lowering. And the hand on your belly should move more than the one that's on your chest. So just take a few deep breaths in this way, feeling your belly rise and your belly emptying out as you breathe through your nose. And then as you do that, let's just practice one little purposing skill, or just touch into what purposing means. And so what I'd like you to do is just imagine, as you continue to breathe, that you visit a doctor and you learn that you only have 5 years left to live. But you won't feel sick. You'll simply have no notice of the moment of death. You don't know when it's happening, but it's probably around 5 years. What would you do in the time you have left? Would you do anything different than you're doing now? Would you change your life in some way? And if so, how? And just contemplate that for a few moments as you continue with belly and chest deep breathing. If you knew you only had 5 years left to live, would you be doing anything different now? If so, what? You might not. You might be doing exactly what you want to be doing. And when you're ready, just come back to the session. That's what purposing ultimately is about. What is our purpose in life? That's what we want to be clear about. And it's certainly going to be important as the climate emergency worsens. Well, I want to just give a brief overview again of what we've done so far in the community of practice. We started off with the first session. I just gave an overview of what the climate emergency looks like, what it means, how it's speeding up, and the need for a public health approach to build population level mental wellness and resilience. The step we took up at the top, you see, was the first session was about, this is the first session we focused on, this was about how to get organized, informing what we call a resilience coordinating coalition, what community groups call whatever they want. You heard from Terry Barilla from the Walla Walla Community Resilience Initiative, and Tina Person from the New Hanover County, North Carolina Resilience Initiative. And I think Tina's part of the group now. We then moved on to how can these community groups, these resilience coordinating coalitions, get started in community? How do you begin building community capacity? And one option that we found was to help people begin to heal the trauma through healing and resilience education programs. And you heard from Matt Erb from the Center for Mind-Body Medicine about how they approach that. And another option is to engage residents in assessing how trauma plays out in their community, developing asset maps around that, or systems maps. And you heard from Vici from the Rural Opportunity Institute who talked about how they help residents and communities do that work. We then talked about using the information that came out of both of those options as information to build a strategy, create a vision of success, goal, strategy, and an action plan. I sent out information about how to do that. We didn't have a separate session specifically on that, but we focused in on the 5 core foundational areas that are really going to be needed to build universal capacity for resilience for the climate emergency. The first one was build social connections across boundaries. And you heard from Howard Lawrence from the Abundant Community Edmonton about how they do it at the neighborhood, block by block level. You then heard, as well as Daniel Holmesy from the Neighborhood Empowerment Program in San Francisco, you then heard about how to create supportive physical built economic and ecological conditions, make that just transition. You heard from Jackie Patterson from the Chisholm Legacy Project, and Violet Wolf-Sienna, who runs the Climate Resilient Communities Program in the Southern Bay Area of California, San Francisco Bay Area. And today we're going to focus in on develop universal mental wellness and resilience. Then the next 2 weeks we'll focus on the other foundational areas. So I want to start with a 10-minute breakout rooms. But this time, rather than talking about the last session, because it was 2 weeks ago, although some of you participated in the open session we had last week, which was very enjoyable, and I hope it was helpful for folks. If you would just talk about what you've gained so far from the community practice, and start off with one word about how do you feel now in the present moment, just to share where you're at. Then discuss what have you gained so far, and how has this influenced you and or your work, and what do you still want to know? And then if you would, towards the end of the 10 minutes, nominate somebody, or actually even before that, somebody take notes, and then nominate somebody to summarize the key points that came out in your discussions in 2 or 3 key points, and post them in chat at the end. So Neely, if you would break everyone up into 4 to 5 person breakout rooms, that would be great. And we'll see you all in 10 minutes.
You want 4 to 5 people in each, Bob?
Yes, please. Oh,
right.
Jesse, yes. Thank you.
You're going to get a prompt on your screen in a second to choose to enter the breakout rooms. Look forward to seeing you all back here soon.
Right. Okay, so we should be back. So welcome back, everyone. If somebody can post the key comments in chat from your group, that would be very, very helpful, so we can just read some. Are people willing to do that? Don't see any yet. Well, if not, does anybody want to just raise their hand and we'll unmute you and you can just sort of share some of the key points that came out? Anybody willing to do that?
It looks like we have one posting
Okay,
from Megan.
there we go. So yeah, from Megan says, it's helpful to have a framework to apply these themes and education, taking on the knowledge, a framework of hope to action. That's really important. Affirmation, affirming to the work that's being done and building community around this and embedding these frameworks into the work we can do to find new ways to embody the strategies. What would you like to learn differently? There's more in there. I'm not going to read it all, but what you would learn more interest in how to apply and translate for our own unique community needs and interest. And thank you for that. We're going to spend the last 2 sessions more on that. And today, Mark says we're all noticing hunger for collection beyond that of screens or readings or writings, connections, not corrections. Megan said, tried to capture the group's reflections quickly, so hope I did it justice. You did fine. We were very interested in things that aren't being talked about. Okay, Mark said, I'm not sure what that means, but well, great. So thank you for sharing all those, and we'll have more time to come back to that. I want to, again, just to allow folks more time to think about what they're learning and how to apply it. And I see from Deborah understanding how climate change is affecting things. So more. So let's dive into this mental wellness and resilience literacy now a little bit more. And this follows from, let's see if I can get this. This follows from health literacy, which is the degree to which people have the capacity to understand and process basic health information to make appropriate health decisions. There's been many health literacy campaigns around the US, Canada, in many parts in the EU and other nations, but they often, and we just heard that, they shortchange the mental health aspects of health often. And this shows that even many healthcare professionals fail to grasp what the World Health Organization coined as the term, which is great. There's no physical health without mental health, and that's very, very true. Without our mental health, we have physical health problems, and we also affect other people who have programs. And research has shown, and you can see the research, read the research in the document I sent to everybody last week for this session, that mental wellness and resilience literacy is very low in most countries. People just don't understand it. So here's a way to think about mental wellness and resilience literacy. Start at the bottom. The first step is to help everyone understand how trauma and toxic stress can affect their body, mind, and emotions, as well as behaviors. And this is often called becoming trauma informed, helping everybody become trauma informed. But usually trauma informed is limited to professionals, to help them understand that the people they work with have been traumatized. But really what we need to do is help everyone understand how trauma and toxic stress can affect their mind, body, and emotions. And then it's to use the knowledge of an ability, to gain the knowledge of and use simple self-administrable, what we call presencing and purposing resilience skills. We're going to dive into those today also. And we're going to dive into the first one. And then it's in this pyramid here because it means that there's fewer and fewer people that need all of it as you go up the pyramid, but everybody needs to understand how trauma and toxic stress affect them. Everyone needs to learn a simple, self-administrable, age and culturally appropriate presencing and purposing skills. But then some people need to know how to use the knowledge and skills to assist others that show symptoms of mental health problems, also uh, to then know how to obtain additional information and resources when somebody's experiencing a mental health problem. And finally, for those who experience or really showing serious symptoms of problems, know how to seek treatment and assistance for those problems. So that's sort of the pyramid of mental wellness and resilience literacy. It just mirrors the pyramid you'll see in health literacy, really. And just like all the other foundational focuses that we've talked about so far and we'll talk about, all of the activities of a Resilience Coordinating Coalition should develop mental wellness and resilience literacy. It should be a standalone focus, as we're going to do today, but it also should be woven into each of the other 4 foundational areas. So for example, when you're building social connections across boundaries, helping people meet people they don't know, connect, build, possibly organize resilience hubs in neighborhoods and communities, you want to also help people understand how trauma and toxic stress might be affecting them and therefore affecting their ability to develop good relationships and their communication styles and what they can do about it. When you're trying to ensure a just transition by creating supportive physical, built, economic, and ecological conditions, you also want to help people understand how the stress they might be under is affecting them and therefore affecting their relationships with others doing this kind of work, their communications, etc. So it really should be embedded in everything that you focus on. And here's one way to help to think about how to help everyone learn about how trauma and toxic stress affect them. And what you really want to do is normalize the people's reactions, help them understand that what they're experiencing is perfectly normal and there's nothing wrong with them, and that the stress they feel is normal, and it's when it's not discharged, released in some way, that it becomes unhelpful. So there's this little graph I have in the middle. That's a view of a person, and some of us you can help people understand. Do you get headaches a lot, or do you get neck aches or shoulder aches? Those little things on the shoulder there, or stomach aches or chest aches, or your hands hurt, etc. And just say that that's normal. We all experience something like that, and think about yourself. Where do you experience stress or distress? And just help people understand that these are natural survival reactions. These are built-in reactions to any sense of threat or overwhelming stress that produce the release, and these stresses are produced by the release of cortisol and adrenaline and some other neurochemicals into our bloodstream. That is, this is a natural reaction, and it's preparing us to fight back, flee the scene, or if it's overwhelming, we freeze. We talked about that in the very first session, and help everybody understand that that reaction, that stress reaction, that natural survival reaction creates a physical reaction of increased blood pressure, pulse rate, difficult breathing, muscle tension, etc., but also a mental reaction. It can lead us to worry too much, have excessive fear, guilt, we lose trust, we shatter assumptions, etc. Those are all normal. And if we learn that they are normal, there's nothing wrong with us when we experience them, and learn how to discharge those reactions when they're no longer needed, we can remain healthy and resilient. But when they are not discharged, what began as helpful adaptive reactions can become harmful. And we can adopt harmful coping mechanisms. For example, we can try to numb the pain we feel by using alcohol or some sort of a substance abuse, drugs, etc. We can seek relief by diversions like overworking, or we play games a lot, whatever it might be. We can seek relief by turning our distress on others, and we become aggressive or violent to others. Or we dissociate or deny it. We just disconnect from it. And that can lead to reenactment. We do the very same things over again because we disconnected from what happened, all of which leads us to less ability to cope with what's happening, solve problems, and enhance our well-being. And we all experience that sometimes in life, those harmful coping mechanisms. The question is, can we use skills and develop skills to sort of just to understand what we're doing and move ourselves back out of it? But if it continues, it can lead to personal breakdown. That kind of harmful coping can lead to physical health problems, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, other sorts of things, psycho-emotional problems, anxiety, depression, PTSD, spiritual problems, meaning loss of spirit and hopelessness, cognitive problems, we start to lose our memory, behavioral problems, as we said, aggression or withdrawal. Again, all of which leads to less ability to cope, problem solve, and to enhance mental or well-being. And if many people experience these kind of reactions, harmful coping and these kind of personal breakdown, we can end up with societal breakdown, trauma-organized communities and societies, and that's what we're seeing so much of today. High distrust, despair, meaninglessness, low empathy and compassion, more authoritarianism and extremism because people say, well, we're the people that can solve your problem. We're the ones who know how to do it. We versus them polarization, increased racism and other systemic oppressions, aggression, crime, et cetera. Again, with less ability to cope with these issues, problem solve, and enhance their well-being. And that creates a vicious cycle that circles back and creates more traumas and toxic stresses for people, and we really get a vicious cycle. So that's one way to explain what happens to people, but you want to do this in an age and culturally appropriate way to help everyone understand that what they're feeling in their body is a natural reaction. This is what's happening. And as long as we learn how to discharge it, release it in some way, we can remain healthy. It's perfectly natural. But if it's not discharged, that's when we can have these harmful reactions. So I'd like to just spend a few minutes now having you teach the neurobiology of trauma and toxic stress to others. So we're going to break up into breakout rooms of 3 people. One person volunteered to be the teacher, the instructor. One person volunteered to be the student that the instructor is going to teach. And one person volunteered to be observer. And what we want to do is the teacher should describe the process in their own words, in your own simple ways, to the student, and for three minutes maximum. The observer, after the 3 minutes is over, the observer then describes what they noticed in the student and in the teacher. Then the student describes what they experienced. Then the teacher describes what it was like for them. And we'll do all this in 10 minutes. And Neely's going to post these questions or this process for you in chat. And then we're going to post the slide I just showed in chat so you have something to look at. I just want you to know going in that the first time you do this kind of teaching, it usually is very difficult and everything often comes out wrong. So just go along with it. It takes a while to sort of get used to this process, but we're going to do it a number of other times today. So let's break up into 10-minute breakout rooms with 3 people each. If there's an odd number, we'll put 4 of you in there and you can have 2 observers. So I'm not sure who's doing that, but Jesse, if you can break us up, we'll do that.
Yep. So there's one room that does have 4, so the double observers in that one. But look forward to seeing everybody in about 10 minutes.
Great. Welcome back, everybody. We understand that's not a lot of time. Anybody want to just share what that was like? Any teachers willing to just very briefly share what trying to teach was like? Raise your hands or just say something out.
Hi, Reb McKenzie. And so I've been following Bob's work since 2016, and I've seen this diagram many times. I've taught this diagram before, and I remember a lot of the processes, but I can't imagine doing it for the first time, just seeing this. So anyway, I hope everybody feels comfortable with just hanging in there and thinking about it. I really enjoyed doing it with the folks I did it with. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Reb. Anybody else want to comment?
So it looks like Vivian raised her hand.
Oh, I didn't see it. Go ahead.
So I want to ask about I had to use a personal example, because of me being in a, toxic stress environment. Is that okay? I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to traumatize people with my own trauma, be careful with that.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine, but just be aware of just what you described, how you describe it, et cetera. But the more you can personalize the experience, the better. But you also might want to check in with the other person first. They might want to just share their story, and you can just use that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Bob, can I make an addition to what you just said?
Sure.
We spend
This is Elaine Miller-Karras, by the way.
We spend a lot of time, and Tamara Church is here, and she's one of our CRIM teachers as well. But we spend a lot of time, addressing that very question, because you do have to. It's kind of tricky because people love to hear personal stories, but if the personal story is so traumatic that it starts to dysregulate the group, then what you're trying to do can backfire. So we talk about what are the resiliency elements in your story? And sometimes that has to do with what else is true. There's survival elements. So, oh, yes, this happened. Oh, but my neighbor came. And at the point that my neighbor came when I was suffering, that made such a difference for me. So it's still weaving the story in the elements that are true, but also putting in additional elements that have to do with really a resiliency focus, even with the hardest of situations. So just wanted to add that.
Great. Samra, well, want to say something?
Yeah, so I'm unmuted, I hope.
Oh,
I actually wanted to share as an observer that we had an amazing teacher, Philip, in our group, who identified as not usually thinking of himself as a teacher, but both the student and myself, the observer, noticed that enabled him to use words that were very humanizing. They weren't filled with jargon. They were very relatable. And so, in our opinion, he related the information in a way that was so powerful and so relatable that he was an excellent teacher, and he did learn it in 60 seconds, to Reb's point. So just sort of that personal ability that maybe some of us don't even know we have, but is latent, and it's very powerful, and it benefited both the observer and the student in the situation.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think what Samra just described is really true. You often learn just as much being the student and an observer as you do being the teacher, but it often takes a while to sort of get it out, to have you get it out of your mouth and sort of how you want to describe it. And you make mistakes the first couple of times. So practice this if you can with different populations, different groups in safe settings. So you sort of get used to how to say this, and also understand how to adapt to different populations and different age groups, et cetera. So, okay, I don't see any more. So we'll just, so this is, these 10-minute sessions are not a lot. It'd be great to allow everyone the chance to be a teacher, et cetera. But I just want everybody to have a chance to experience this. And then I would encourage you to try to teach this to your kids, or friends, families, colleagues, and just let them know you're trying to learn how to teach it. And so expect some issues to arise. So we're going to move on now. And after you help everyone understand how trauma and toxic stress can affect their mind, body, and behaviors and emotions, and remember, think about what if everybody in your community or in your neighborhood or in your organization learned about that. Then help them learn simple, self-administrable, age and culturally appropriate purposing and resilience, and presencing and purposing resilience skills. And this is framed around the knowledge that we humans are pushed by these psychobiological drives, those forces that are in us, but we're also pulled by a desire for our lives to have meaning and purpose. So what we call presencing are skills to manage the push of those psychobiological drives. There's self-regulation skills and co-regulation skills. And when we develop the knowledge that we can manage our body, minds, and emotions in any situation, we'll get dysregulated, but we can bring ourselves back. We develop people develop a great deal of confidence and peace of mind. That is to say, it builds self-efficacy. And when people are able to to develop purposing skills, really learn those, to find meaning, direction, and healthy hope in the middle of adversity, that really intensifies the pull of purpose in our lives, intensifies that. And those are really adversity-based growth skills. And the ability to use adversities as catalysts to learn and grow and find new meaning, direction, and healthy hope really increases our mental wellness and our capacity, our resilience to respond constructively to future adversities. So with that, and Elaine, I'm only 6 minutes late, I want to introduce Elaine Miller-Karras, who's the co-founder and now Director of Innovation at the Trauma Resource Institute and one of the original founding members of the ITRC, going back now, believe it or not, almost a decade ago. I think it's 9 years. Yeah. And she's going to lead you through a whole bunch of other skills and practice sessions. So Elaine, thank you for joining us, and it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Bob. And I'm so grateful to be here with all of you, and so lovely to see the large group. And I'm so, I guess I get encouraged and very hopeful when I see how you're all here trying to help our planet and the people who live on our planet. So let me start out by saying, I want to just kind of piggyback on what's been happening here, but I've learned when we brought our community resiliency model skills forward, and that's what I'm going to do an appetizer with you today for, is that if you hear it and then you see it and then you do it, then it really does get incorporated into your bones and it makes it easy to share it. So I love that Bob is doing these little 10-minute things that some of you are saying, hey, I can actually teach this. Because if we don't get that opportunity, and I just want to say that's what we've done in communities after disasters as well, is have people share with one another some of the skills. And then you see that there's then this, we talk about stress contagion, but then what I see is well-being contagion that can happen very simply. So, okay, I'm going to get started. And there's a couple of things that I have for you, and she's put it in the chat. So we're going to have a 20-minute breakout session. So I'm going to just talk for about 20 minutes, but I really want you all to get a chance to do it. And I've created scripts for you of how to, and if you wanted to just read the scripts when you're in that, what we call a CRIM guide role, and that would be a person who's bringing this presency skills forward, that would be fine. And I also have another document that has what we call conversational resourcing and conversational help now strategies, which probably that particular document I use the most after human-made and natural disasters. So I've tried to make things kind of easy for you to kind of grab onto, to practice, and to have after we're done. So with that, I'm going to put in one more thing before I forget to do it into the chat as well. And we have an association with Medscape. And if you want to have an hour presentation of the community resiliency model, you can go to Medscape for free. And you can take the 1-hour community resiliency model workshop, as well as there's like a 20-minute video by our leading researchers of our model that you can also watch for free. Okay, so let me get my screen share up and we'll get started with my information. Okay, hold on. I just have to figure out how to get this thing going so that we're in the presenter view. All right, the slideshow. Okay, here we go. All right, so we've decided to call what we do after human-made and natural disasters, and also what we do for prevention, to start creating within communities resiliency ideas. We call it Dream CRIM, and it's the disaster relief mobilization community resiliency model. And that's something that we started right before the pandemic, and we haven't been sending it out as much as we want to because we've done so much during the pandemic. But these are the kind of goals that we have, and that's to provide a structure for preparation to further strengthen resilience so communities can respond to events with strength and compassion and with common language. And Bob and I in our ITRC group have had many discussions about this, because we're not only talking about climate change, we're talking about all the storms that happen in life, that what we're doing can also be relatable to, and we can generalize to. And we want to create a cadre of community resiliency model teachers made up of professional and natural leaders of communities. Now, we can broaden this also in terms of ITRC, because it's not just only community resiliency model teachers, but what you're learning to do. But we also want to share these wellness skills with the entire community, children, teens, and adults. And that's why, I don't know if Tina's still here, but why I just love New Hanover County and what they've done there, because they're actually doing it. And what a great model they are for all of us to see how out of the horrible hurricane, that so much resiliency has spread throughout their community. And then we want to link community members and survivors to community-based programs and governmental entities that support prevention, resiliency, and reconstruction. Now, I'm going to just give you some facts about what CRIM is. First of all, it's 6 wellness skills. We're not going to learn all of them. I'm going to go over a couple of them today for you, and that's what you're going to be teaching others in just a little bit. But they can be used across the lifespan, across cultures with different abilities. I can't even believe this is true, but there are 75 countries now have the CRIM skills that they are integrating in different ways, across our globe, which we're so proud of. But I also want to touch into this word resiliency, because here we talk about it so much. We've had some pretty lively conversations about whether we like the word or not. But I think what's important to remember is that any word can get weaponized. I've personally chosen in our model not to get rid of it. But we also, I think, when you do teachings with others, that you need to talk about it and ask people what their definition is. But this is what we've decided what it is within the community resiliency model. And that is, first and foremost, we start out, and it's really threaded with compassion and empathy, that we do not forget our collective suffering and historical suffering, that we can lean into it, but then we can also lean into our collective assets and strengths. And that when we do that, like Bob said, there can be this optimism and hope that can emerge, and people then become more solution focused for the purposing skills. But an essential part of what we do is we call embodied well-being, because if that toxic stress that Bob talked about happens in the body, then we also need to be really focused on how we're also designed for well-being. And a couple of years ago, I read the Book of Joy by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, who sadly died last year. But Dr. Davidson, who's from the University of Wisconsin, he talks about resiliency circuits that we have in our brain. So not only are we designed to remember the traumas in our life, but we as human beings, I have found this to be very compelling when I go into disasters, to talk about we're designed for well-being. So he talks about the resilience circuits, which is the rapidity which we recover from adversity. He talks about the positive outlook circuit. One has a healthy and robust positive outlook circuitry when they're able to see and recognize the positive in others, as well as the ability to savor positive experiences. When I was in the Philippines after Typhoon Yolanda, I remember a man who actually lost some of his family members, and another man who'd lost some of his family members. And when we were talking with them and really bringing these wellness skills to help them regulate their nervous system, he said, "You see that man over there? We decided that we're going to create a new family." And it was that positive outlook circuitry. I would never have said that to him. He said it to me as he was thinking about how he was reconstructing his well-being after such a devastating tragedy. But we also have an attention circuit. And I know that when Bob talks about those presencing skills, it's our ability to pay attention, not only to recognize those sensations that are distressful, but those sensations connected to our well-being, which we all have. And to think that we're designed this way is always a very hopeful thing for me when I talk about it. But the generosity circuit is something that I think we all can develop, even in a greater way. It also makes me feel like I have to be confessional that I have, is that I love to watch Hallmark movies, and there's always that kiss at the end. And I really realize, because sometimes it makes me kind of feel bad that I deal with trauma all the time and I love Hallmark movies. Why is that, Elaine? Because I think that in those movies, in very simple ways, they show generosity. They show people being generous to one another. They show people being, I observe that generosity. And so what Dr. Davidson said, that generosity circuit lights up when we're generous to someone else, when someone is generous towards us, and when we observe generosity. So what an important practice that would be, to even for a moment to think about, gosh, when was the last time that someone was generous towards me, or that I observed an act of generosity? You don't have to do it at this moment, but I'm doing it right now, and I'm thinking about a moment in time that I had, and I just, my body feels with warmth and well-being. And that's what we're trying to cultivate, is bringing that up even in the worst of times. So I know that Bob's already talked about the neuroscience, but there's two terms that I'm using a lot right now when I talk to communities. And that is it's called tuning and pruning. And one of my favorite books now is from Lisa Feldman Barrett, 7.5 Lessons About the Brain. And, I've heard about pruning forever, that if neural connections that aren't used, they weaken and they disappear. The use it or lose it principle. But tuning, and she talks about this in her work, is the positive experiences that can change the actual structure of the brain by increasing that number of connections between neurons. And this image that I have for you has to do with, look at this pathway that's very clear, because this person has walked on this pathway many times, and we can create those positive neural circuits in our own brain and body by really bringing our attention to the experiences of our life that are connected to our well-being. And notice that out here in the distance, that pathway is disappearing because it's pruning. And so, remembering that those brain cells that fire together, wire together, and that neuroplasticity that the brain can change is what this is all about. So we all have a nervous system, a body and a mind designed for well-being and to heal. And when we pay attention to sensations connected to well-being, we can experience a sense of inner balance. And the more we focus and with attention, now we know about that circuitry, right? The well-being expands. And I think hope and compassion expands to others. What we've also learned that's been very important in our model is creating a common language. And this is very simple. Some of you have seen it before. If you've heard me speak, Bob has had me speak many times. And that is that we all have a resilient zone or an okay zone. Some people call it the zone of well-being. In Spanish, it's called la zona de bienestar. But this zone of well-being is not about being calm all the time. It can be calm, but it's about the whole plethora of human emotions. It can be anger, it can be sad. But when we're in this zone of well-being, like I can say, when my mother died, I was very sad, but I could manage the sadness. Or that there can be righteous anger. When some of us think about not working on climate change, we can get very angry that we have to have an urgency of helping our planet and helping our people. But we're within this zone. We can manage the emotions connected to that. So this zone of well-being is very important. And I love when children say, hey, you mean I can be okay sad or okay mad? I go, yeah, but you're within that zone and you're not harming yourself and you're not harming others. Now, this slide seems kind of wild when you look at it, but here's our zone of well-being in the middle. But we can have reminders of stressful or traumatic events or be living in one. And instead of having this nice rhythm, we can get knocked into what we call the high zone or the low zone. And I have been in all of these zones, and you don't have to raise your hand, but if I'm in my high zone, I lose my ability to think clearly. I can get edgy or irritable and react in ways that go, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to apologize. What just happened to me? Or the low zone, we're depressed or sad, or I don't want to get out of bed, or I just want to not even think about the world because it's too much. So any of us can get into the high zone or low zone. If we get stuck there is when it gets problematic. And as I go around the world, I meet people that are stuck there. But the good news is that we don't have to live in that space, that we can learn to recognize the sensations connected to all of these states. And with greater time and attention, again, because we're designed that way, we can widen our zone of well-being so that when life events happen, that we're not so easily knocked into the high or low zone. Not to say it still can happen, but as people have said to me all over the world, it's easier for me to get back in than it was before. So those are the zones. And I just want you to think for a second, what zone are you in right now? Are you in your high zone, your low zone, your zone of well-being? And so you can put it in the chat if you want, but I think the most important thing is that you know where you are, because if you're not within that zone, then there are practices, some of which Bob has already talked about, and ones that I'm going to talk about now that can help you get back in there. So this was actually designed by my friend who's Japanese, and she lives in America now. But when she learned the skills, she goes, Elaine, the skills are in the palm of our hands. And so we have 6 skills: tracking, resourcing, grounding, help now, gesturing, and shift and stay. So I don't have time to tell them all, to share all of them with you, but not to worry, we have a free iChill app. And this free app is offered in English and Spanish. And we just got a grant, thank God, for Ukrainian, because we've been doing a project with the Ukrainians for the last 9 months. So you can go there and have an overview of what I'm talking about today, and also learn the skills that we don't have time to go into today. All right, so now I'm going to go, now I understand from Bob that he's already talked about tracking, resourcing, and grounding. So I'm going to just highlight some areas of these elements that I think are important before I do a small demonstration with Tamara Church. Thank you, Tamara, for agreeing to do this. Before you go into your practice group to practice with the script or by memory from what you're going to see. But I'm going to talk about these, what I call the basic 3. And because this model, because trauma, as Bob's already talked about, it is biological. So we try to help people understand that what's happened to them is not because they're mentally weak or there's some kind of pathology. It is because of their biology. And that when we learn to read our nervous system, and we feel that this skill is the foundation, that once we can do that, it opens up certainly what people say to me, that they become empowered in ways they didn't know were possible. And this was a study that was done in Finland. What I like about this slide, and I use it in every presentation that I give, first of all, it talks about, what is a sensation? It's a physical experience in the body. And we have literally billions of receptors distributed in every part of our body that help us read our nervous system. And that every experience we have in life, our thoughts and our feelings, have corresponding sensations in the body. And when we can start to learn about that, it can change it. And I'm just going to point out anger. First of all, she showed images, and people drew on composite drawings of a body where they felt activation. You can see that the colors of yellow and red meant more activation. The darker colors, blue and black, meant they didn't sense an activation in the body. I'm going to be giving this slide presentation to you so that you can go and look at the full study if you want to have more information about it. But look at anger, and I'll just point that out. Look at what's happening in the hands. And oftentimes when people are very angry, they may act out, right? Because there's so much energy that's happening. But what if you were able to notice the anger in their hands, and instead of striking out, that you could go as simply as someplace in your body, maybe your feet, that didn't feel so angry, and all of a sudden the anger starts to dissipate from your hands. And so some of you may be going, well, don't you have to talk about the anger? Well, guess what? I've learned that you don't. Some people may need to eventually, but when you're in that state of anger, usually talking doesn't work because it's coming from the survival brain that Bob has already talked to you about. And that part of the brain responds to sensation, not to words. Have you ever been really angry or really anxious and you said to yourself, stop being anxious, stop being whatever, but it didn't work because you were speaking the wrong language, and the sensation is the key. And so this slide has to do with, to me, is one of the most important things that neuroscientists are finding. So reading the nervous system is interoceptive awareness. And when we can do that, what scientists are finding, that not only do we have better impulse control, but we have better emotion regulation. So imagine if every person in your community was able to read their nervous system to know when those angry things happened in their body, and they knew how to regulate or shift their awareness to their well-being. So the insula seems to be the hub of the neurocircuitry of this, and it's what helps to read the states in the body. So, and you've all done this, right? When you have an itch, what do? You scratch it. So basically what we're doing is we're saying, oh, well, you can read your nervous system because it does direct a behavior, but what if you could do this with greater intentionality? And that's what I think these skills do. And so just as Bob was talking about all those sensations and symptoms of toxic stress, when we can tell the difference between the sensations of distress and well-being, that's the liberating moment because it gives us choice. So when you get into the breakout groups, one of the things we're going to ask you to do is to be curious, to ask, what do you notice on the inside? Is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? And we're going to actually swerve to pleasant and neutral in our small practice that we're going to have. So these are all sensory words, and there's so many of them. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time to develop them. And if you put your hands together right now and just rub your hands together really fast, let's do it together really fast. Oh my goodness, okay. I'm feeling heat in my hands. I don't know about you. So that's temperature, right? That's hot. And as I slow down, they start to cool. So this is a very simple way that we can teach people about learning how to understand sensations, just a simple exercise of the hands. But the very best way to learn about tracking is through resourcing. And those are the things in our life that uplift us, that, bring us joy, pleasure. If you're looking at these people, what are they? They look like they have pizza. They're drinking coffee. There's light in the room. There's smiles. There's friendliness. All those would be resources. And we know that resources can be just so huge for everyone, right? There can be, like this little girl, here's my granddaughter. She's a big resource for me. It doesn't have to be a real, it can be an imagined resource. Many people, when I've asked this question around the world, often say their family and friends are very huge resources, as well as beautiful places in nature. I was in Ireland in June, and that's the Causeway. If anybody has ever been there, it's one of the most gorgeous places on the planet. But what is important for all of you to remember and for you to share with others is, how can you help people start to develop their resources? So just for a moment now, if you have a piece of paper, to write down one of your resources, but describe it, because you need to have the elements of what the ingredients are. And here you can see many of the different, does it have a smell? Does it have a sight, a taste, a sound? Can you see the image of the person, the place? Maybe it's a tradition. Maybe it's your spiritual beliefs or a healing practice. They say it takes between 15 to 20 seconds for that resource to be deeply felt, for you to start to feel a shift in the nervous system. That's why it's important to describe it. And just for a moment, as you're describing this to yourself, or if you've written it down, what do you notice on the inside? Is there any changes in your breathing and your muscle relaxation or tension? Has your heart rate slowed up or sped up? Sometimes the speeding up of the heart rate can be pleasant. I love roller coasters. If I think about a roller coaster, it can make my heart rate speed up, but it's pleasant. So just spend a moment more. And I am going to invite you to also put in the chat what your resource is, and also to invite you to put in if you notice a sensation. And also I want to say there's no right or wrong sensation, because sometimes I can think about my grandma and get sad, and that might cause a little bit of tension. But then I can also shift my awareness to all the things that she meant to me, and that tension loosens, the sadness starts to drift away. And I remember what a wonderful resource she still is, even though she died about 10 years ago, 15 years ago now. Okay. So that's resourcing. And see if anybody, this 23rd Psalm. Hallmark Christmas show, Jennifer, there's someone like me. So I just see two. Let's see if anybody else puts anything in. Yeah, Lynn, a place in your imagination that you made up. My grandmother praying. Music, hiking in the woods, a pair of enormous white pines in my favorite nature preserve, peaceful and invigorating. Music, walking my labyrinth. Oh, Vivian, I love labyrinths. I used to have one in my backyard as well. Elder ducks cooing in Dunbar Harbor. You know, and sometimes what happens to us, and this may be happening to some of you right now, as I read them out loud, that you might be able to attach onto another resource with someone else and also feel the well-being connected to that for you. Walking near the ocean, wet sand, salty air, seagulls, big sky. As you're putting this in here, I just also want you to know that what I've learned as well, it's very important not to prescribe a resource for someone, that each of us have different resources. And what may be a resource for me would never be a resource to Bob, for example. And sometimes resources, one time I was humming a song and a friend said, Elaine, could you please stop humming that song? And I was like, oh, and she said, and turned out she'd been assaulted when that song was playing in the background. So sometimes we don't even know what that might be, which is why it's important to be very invitational when you do this work. And so finally, I know that he talked about grounding. And I just want to say about grounding, without being in the present moment, it's hard for us to be able to be compassionate. It's hard for us to actually engage with others. And we need that gravitational security. And what I've seen after climate change disasters is sometimes they literally throw us off of our feet. And that sometimes can just be such an essential skill to bring in, but it's not always with the feet. It may be with the hand or with the torso, because some people who've had some sorts of trauma, bringing attention to the feet can sometimes make them feel wobbly. And so when I do a grounding exercise, which I have in your script, the script that I'm going to do really quickly, I show you how you can ground without doing that, but to also remember that there are some people that have been tortured in chairs. So I always like to give people choices of grounding, you know, lying down, standing against a wall, you know, laying on a surface. And sometimes the simplest and a very profound way of grounding is walking and paying attention to steps. Okay, now, I just want to say a couple things about conversational resourcing, because if you're responding to a climate change emergency, and one of the ways that we can really help with mental well-being is giving reassurance. And sometimes it's grounding through touch. But touch is tricky because sometimes people don't want to be touched. But I can't tell you how many times that someone has said, oh, so it was so helpful when you touched my hand. And I might say, would it be okay if I just touched your hand or your shoulder? And sometimes I might say, as they're, you know, can you feel your feet on the ground too? And is that pleasant, neutral? If it's unpleasant, you don't have to do that. And sometimes it's as simple as saying, is there someone you want me to call? As we are waiting, can you tell me what or who helps you get through tough times? That one question literally has been my go-to question. And it's very unlikely that a person cannot bring something up. And when they do that, you can see them take that deep parasympathetic breath and come back into a zone of well-being. All right, let me see how I'm doing with my time. Okay, what I'm going to do now is there's some other strategies in here. I can't find my little thing, that have to do with help now. And this is a skill. I didn't tell you, Bob, that I was going to teach this, but I said I almost can't not teach this right now, especially when we talk about these kinds of things. And these are conversational ways of engaging people that you're not actually saying, oh, I'm going to teach you a skill, but it's because you're, let's say, working in a shelter. And you're asking, well, would it be helpful if we went for a walk together? You know, sometimes it helps me to get the energy of anxiousness out by pushing against the wall. Do you want to do that with me right now? Or even something as simple, can I get you a drink of water? Or sometimes it helps me when I'm feeling really jacked up to look around the room and name colors. You want to do that with me right now? Maybe it might help, or not. I always say the or not at the end. But then, you know, I also can say, you know, you can count down from 20, or when I'm not feeling like my best my best self. I have found it helpful to remember a time in my life that was better than this moment. Like, people sometimes laugh when I ask that question, and they go, well, I can think of lots of times it's better than this moment since this thing has happened. And it's such a beautiful way that we can talk about these things. And of course, I can always talk about the iChill app and bring that forward. So these are other conversational resourcing questions. I'm not going to read each one because you have it in your handout that can be one of the things that you can try when we get into the breakout room, is just trying some of these conversational resourcing questions with one of the participants in your room. Okay, now, before we do this, this is what we're going to have you do, but I'm going to tell you what the assignment is before Tamara and I come in to give you a brief demonstration. So we're going to, one person will be the community resiliency model guide. One person is learning the skills from the guide. And then there's a supportive observer. So you can choose to either share a resource while tracking, because you want to do resourcing and tracking, because remember, tracking goes with every skill. So if you ask a person about, like, what uplifts them, and they say their granddaughter, and they describe the granddaughter, you're going to say, and what are you noticing on the inside? Is that pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? But if you want to, you can take them through the grounding script that's in the guide that I have provided for you. And of course, as they ground, you're going to also ask them what they're noticing. And then finally, you can just try one or a couple of the conversational resourcing or the reset now strategies. And each one of you are going to have 5 minutes. So we'll do a round robin when you're in your breakouts, and we're giving you 20 minutes. I know that's like after 10, that seems like a lot, huh? That you can do a little bit of practice. Okay. So Tamara, I'm going to stop this share right now. And could you pin us, Jesse, Tamara, and I, so people can see us?
Doing that now, just finding Tamara to pin as well.
Okay, great. And so you can also, there you are, Tamara. She looks like, yes, she's in Florida where she lives.
North Carolina.
I'm in North Carolina. All right.
And you're pinned.
All right. Okay. Great. And now I guess I have to pin her to see her. That's what I'm going to do right now, because we're pinned, but I can't see it. Okay. So I'm seeing you on my screen, Tamara. So Tamara, would it be okay with you? I know with everything, I'm going to do some role play with real play, because we're really using her nervous system. We're not pretending sensations. And Tamara has done this already because she is a certified CRIM teacher. So Tamara, but we're pretending like she doesn't know. So Tamara, I've learned these set of skills that sometimes with everything that's going on might be helpful for you right now. Would it be all right if I just explain to you a little bit about the community resiliency model, the key concepts, and teach you a couple skills that might be helpful for you right now?
Yeah, I'm at the end of my semester and it's really stressful and I could use some help.
All right. Well, first of all, I wanted to share with you, we have a very simple concept that's called the zone of well-being, or the resilient zone. And it's kind of that zone where we feel like we can manage whatever life throws at us. I always think about it as kind of like the rhythm of a wave, that it has its ups and downs, just like life does. But it's like, okay, yeah, all right, it's the end of the semester. I've got to, correct all those papers, but hopefully I can be in my zone when I'm doing them. Maybe if you get too many, you can get out of your zone. But, it's like, do you think you can manage, correcting the papers at the end of the semester? I don't know. Yes? No? Yeah.
Yeah. It's stressful.
Stressful. Okay. Well, but maybe you're in that zone of well-being and maybe you're not. But so what happens sometimes if we have a lot of stressors is we can get knocked into what's called the high zone or the low zone. High zone, we're like edgy, irritable. It's like, if our family member says something to them, instead of saying, well, what do you want for dinner? What do you want for dinner? And we're going, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not my best self right now. And the low zone, we may be disconnected and people are going, Tamara, are you okay? Tamara, you need to get out of that bedroom and come and have dinner with us. So we sometimes could just become disconnected. So that's the high zone, the low zone, and the zone of well-being. Do you think you've ever been in any of those zones?
Oh, absolutely. I tend to go high more than low. Yes, but absolutely.
I tend to go high more than low as well.
Yes.
But I now know how to get back in. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but it's much better than it used to be. And that's what we hope for everyone, that they can learn how to read their nervous system and be able to start what we call tracking and their nervous system, so that when they get into those different places, they know how to get back into that zone of well-being. So that's what I'd like to kind of segue to, is just teach you a couple of skills that could be really helpful for you when you feel really stressed out, when you're, when you think, oh my gosh, I'm not in my zone, Elaine, I've got too many papers to correct. Is that okay?
That would be wonderful.
Okay. So the first thing I'd like to ask you about is a resource. And a resource can be anything that uplifts you, that brings you peace or calm, or sometimes it can be something that's energetic, like I like roller coasters, but sometimes it's my granddaughter. But I'm wondering, and it can be real or imagined. So sometimes people say, I don't know if I have a resource. Many times it's people's furry creatures like dogs and cats. But sometimes it can be an imagined resource. Like I have a friend who loves George Clooney. She's got a relationship with him and never met him. But I think she imagines what it would be like, to know him, because she, I guess, appreciates him. So is there a resource that you can call up right now and share with me?
Yes, actually, it involves someone that's in this call, Tina, from New Hanover County. So I met her at a resilience retreat just about a month ago, and she and I spent some time hiking in the woods, and it was just phenomenal. It was I was able to go on 3 hikes, only one with her, but it was just great getting out in nature, hearing the birds. There were some woodpeckers out there. Yeah, it was great, hearing the leaves underneath my feet.
Oh my gosh, you've really expanded that image. And can you kind of capture that right now as we're talking, that image of being in the woods with Tina and all the beauty that was around you?
I can. It's right here at fall. So the leaves were starting to change colors, but yet you could see just like kind of, what would I say, little pockets of sunlight that would burst through and come onto the ground. So you would feel that warmth as you walked through. And there's the smells. And I don't even know what smell it is, but the smell of the woods. And the leaves, there's a smell to that I can't
smell to that. Well, it's so just notice that you can notice that smell and what that's like for you right now with all the images that you have shared with us. So the next skill has to do with reading your nervous system, and that is there are sensations that are connected to our experiences of well-being, like you just described to us. And I'm going to ask you right now, do you notice anything happening on the inside as you call up that image right in this present moment?
I do. I noticed that my breathing got a little deeper and slower. I can feel my heart rate. It's beating a little bit slower as well. I feel like I just have more of a sense of calm over me. I feel a little bit of warmth inside.
Well, I'm just going to invite you to notice those sensations that are pleasant for you right now. Are they pleasant? I should have asked you actually, either pleasant or neutral or unpleasant.
They're pleasant.
So just notice those sensations that are pleasant. I actually took a deep breath myself there. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, so that's tracking, reading your nervous system, and with a resource. So that's something that you can practice at those times when the stress is hitting you hard regarding all that stuff you have to do at the end of the semester. And maybe that will help you come back into that zone of well-being that may help you be able to be more present with the tasks that are before you. Well, the third skill that I want to introduce is just called grounding. And that's just about a sense of yourself in the present moment. And what we found is that for some people, especially, I know that you were in that horrible hurricane not long ago, that, sometimes we can just feel like not quite ourselves and we can feel wobbly. And so having that sense of what we call gravitational security, that that you're here right now, is very important for many of us. And we can ground sitting like we're sitting together. I tend to ground through my hand. And so if I just put my hand, let's say on a table, you want to try that with me?
Mm-hmm, I do.
Yeah. So notice what happens when you put your hand on the table. Is the table hard? Is it soft?
It's hard.
And does it have a temperature?
It is. It's cool.
Cool. And as you put your hand there, is that a pleasant, neutral, or unpleasant sensation?
It's pleasant.
Yeah, so just notice that. And as you have your hand there, see if anything else happens with the rest of your body in terms of you feeling yourself in relationship to, for example, where you're sitting right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know that I've noticed before, but I had my feet propped up.
Uh-huh.
But I'm pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
Our boss lady bought us nice chairs, so.
Well, I'm going to invite you just to notice how you're comfortable right now, and even noticing your body in relationship to that chair, your back against the back of the chair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And your legs, can you sense your legs, your thighs?
Mm-hmm. I can against the chair.
Yeah.
And I now feel my feet on the floor.
Yeah, noticing your feet on the floor. Yeah, and just take a moment to kind of peek inside and notice what's happening on the inside as you do that.
I noticed we both just took that nice.
I know, look at that. We're co-regulating. And I think that's important.
Mm-hmm.
It happens in life, yes, to do that together, Tamara. So Tamara, thank you so much for, allowing me to share these 3 skills with you. And I hope that you might find them helpful. And also know that there is like a free iChill app that has all the skills that you can download on a smartphone. And if you don't have a smartphone, some people still have flip phones. I won't say who, but I know somebody on this call does, named Bob Doppelt. But you can go to www.ichill.com on the internet and listen to it if you don't have a smartphone. Look at Bob, he's smiling at me. All right. So thank you so much. Anything you want to say to the group as we end?
I would just like to share that I have been a certified CRIM teacher for about 1.5 years now. And as someone who has experienced a lot of trauma, it has been life-saving.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I love sharing it.
Thank you. All right. So now you can unpin us now, Jessie. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go into our breakout room, but I just want to point out to you what you've got here and notice what you have. Can you see what says the community resiliency model? Sometimes I don't know. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So if you look at this and you just go down, first it has invitational language. It has what I've just used here, but it gives you a script, step 1, step 2, step 3, that you can follow if you'd like. And it kind of uses the languages that I've just demonstrated to you, but it also gives you a little bit more of a definitive script. I did a little bit of a ad lib with Tamara, and it gives you an ending. So you can use that to help you when you're in your breakout room. And then the other thing you can do if you decide that that's not something you want to do, you don't want to do that, but you want to try the conversational resourcing questions. Can you see that one now or not?
Yes.
Okay. And so on this one, you can see that I prepared for you. This is the help now, reset now that I talked about. You can try that, or you can try some of the conversational resourcing questions. So you've got 3 different options that you can do in your breakout. And any questions before we start? Oops, I almost left the meeting.
Elaine, we're going to have to do this in 15 minutes now, not 20.
Okay, well, look at that. 5 minutes over. We can do 15. So everyone might not get a chance, but just like Bob said, that observer role is really important. Okay, all right. So take it away.
So Jesse, you're going to break people up and we'll have a 15-minute breakout.
Yep. Opening rooms now, you should go automatically into those rooms, just so you know.
Okay, everybody's back. Elaine, we've got 5 more minutes.
All right. Well, I want to give people an opportunity. Maybe 1 or 2 can tell us what that was like. Any feedback? Bob has very nicely given me 5 extra minutes. Thank you, Bob. So would someone like to share their experience? I'm hoping someone will raise their hand. Let's see, Bob. Let's see if anybody's going to see what that was like. Was it helpful having the scripts or not? Did at least one? Okay. Oh, Tina, do you want to share with me? Tina?
Sure. Sorry while I chew a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
I am a CRIM guide. I'm not yet a certified trainer. So it is a little nerve-wracking to explain it to somebody else, even though I feel like I've done it before. So it was helpful to have those scripts available so that I could work from them and be a little bit more confident.
Oh, good. Thank you for sharing, Tina. Marissa, you had a smile on your face. Can I ask, would it be okay to ask you?
Yeah, I was actually about to share. So,
oh my gosh, look at that. I must have sensed it.
I was doing this for the first time. So the guide was very helpful, but as someone who's practicing it for the first time, I realized that I was leaning really hard on the script and not asking as many engaging questions and connecting with my student as much as I think would be helpful to create an authentic experience. So my group was very supportive, and it was a good practice, but I already learned some things that I'd like to improve.
Wonderful. And, and that's what happens too when you have a script that you're like relying on in the beginning, but you'll find that in time, you don't even need the script. And those first times that you do it, I know I feel a little clunky when I'm learning something new. So thank you, Marissa. So we have time for one more. See if there's anyone else that's going to share. Okay. Oh, we have as someone who doesn't like that attention and hasn't done this before, I noticed my own growing anxiety when trying to lead. Oh, Lissa, that is so true. And whenever we're doing something new, and I think that's why, with, Bob encouraging these practices, the more we do it, the better that we get. And I love when he said, if you're learning something, have your best friend come over, or maybe it's a family member who loves you unconditionally. And so you can be clunky with them and not have to worry that you're bringing this to someone who doesn't know you. Oh, I love my grandmother's name was Eva. So I love that name. Resilience and knowledge on mental health should not be a privilege. It's very sad that every school are not Montessori schools. In public school, we just learn how to be quiet and immobile in classes. But I also want you to know there's a growing movement. We have many school districts that are integrating the community resiliency model skills. And we're also engaged with the C Learning program, the social, emotional, and ethical learning program that was inspired by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And the CRIM is chapter 2. I wrote it. And it's in schools, not only in the US, but in many parts of the world. And it's just been like one of the privileges of my life that that's happening. So Eva, I want you to know it's slow, but it's happening. And by the way, you could go to C Learning, SEE Learning at Emory University, and it's free. If you want to bring it to your school district, you can become part of their movement. And it's just an exciting, exciting thing that they're doing around the world. Yes, I think all mental health professionals need this, and we certainly have a mission. I think Bob and I both feel that, don't we? Our whole ITRC committee, because it's not only the CRIM is only one concept, right? Bob taught you belly breaths, and there's other, there's mindfulness and things like that. So I've learned that you need an array of different skills. Not every skill set, including what I've just shared with you, is going to be helpful for every person. But if we have an array of different skills, then we give the possibility to so many people around the world to have this choice, right, in helping to bring that well-being to themselves and to others. Because when we sense our well-being, just like what happened with Tamara and I, right, we both took that deep breath, that co-regulation happens. And I think that's what changes communities. And I think we know from New Hanover County, you are the example of that, Tina, in so many ways. And there's so many people that I just love in your county. Bodine, oh my gosh. Oh my God, I just can go on and on. Amy, oh, there's a big group of them. Kelly, Carrie, anyway. So thank you, everybody. I think I'm done. I got the hook now, right? Okay, Bob.
The Zoom hook.
I got the Zoom hook, but thank you, everybody. And I'm going to put my our trauma resource I'm just going to have her send you the slides that has all of our contact information if you want to contact us. All right.
Thank you, Elaine, so much. I really appreciate it. As usual, wonderful presentation, and thank you again. We'll post all of this in Basecamp site for the community practice also. And I just want to say one thing. What you just said, co-regulation, is also very, very important. And you have to first learn these presencing self-regulation skills, and then you become aware of how you can share those with others or notice how another person is what space they're in, and then try to develop that co-regulation so you both can calm yourself, and then that helps with talking with and communicating with people that you might not agree with or think you don't agree with, or that are really very revved up and outside their resilient growth zone. So it's one thing to keep in mind. I want to just share a couple other things and then we'll wrap up. First, let's see, we want to, Elaine said there's a number of other presencing skills, and here's a list of all of, many of them. They're breath-based skills, awareness-based skills, mindfulness, etc., culturally based skills, spiritually based skills, physically based skills. And the real key is in working in your community to find what are age and culturally appropriate skills. What do people relate to the most, as well as the CRIM skills, which I think everyone, it really is one of those sets of skills that almost everybody can relate to, at least some of them. So just keep that in mind. And one other thing that we have found in our work is helping people develop a presencing safety plan. And this is something that people can do. We've done this. We just did this about 3 weeks ago in a community, that you ask people to notice, to write down the signs, the symptoms they're going to watch for when they're outside of their resilience zone. Okay, my rapid breathing, or my heart's beating stronger, or I get tension in my shoulders, or a headache, etc. And then they write down, okay, what am I going to do when I see these symptoms? What actions will I take? I might practice tracking, grounding, controlled breathing, etc. And you can have people develop these safety plans, and then put them on a little card and put them on their mirror in their bathroom, or on their desk if they're at work or at home, etc. And it's a way to remind us. People can remind themselves what to look for. Oh yeah, oh God, I've had a headache all day. All right, now what can I do? Oh, okay, I can practice tracking, I can practice grounding, whatever. And it can be very, very powerful for certain people. We also just want to remember that there are two focuses here we want to focus on, as well as the rest of the literacy practices. The first we talked about is presencing. Next week, we're going to come back and talk a little bit more before we dive into other things about purposing and some skills you can develop there on that. But I want to just leave you with 3 keys for each of you in the work you do, because you're working in difficult situations. And the first is be present and care for yourself so you can care for others and the world. But also to stand up for your purpose. We'll dive more into that. Don't let other people or external conditions deter you, because when you do that, you're going to help them also. And also ride the winds of change towards transformation. It's going to be up and down and change it, and be secure that in your resilience to deal with those changes, those winds of changes. So it's just something to think about. And as I've said every time and close with, always remember that if trauma can be passed down through generations, then so can healing and transformational resilience. And this is what we're trying to do, especially as the climate emergency gets worse and other things add to it. So if you would, please remember to complete the session evaluation, some homework if you're willing, practice a presencing and a purposing skill, and try to teach those skills to others. Use Elaine's material and just try to teach, practice teaching. That's how you'll learn it the best. And then share what you learned today with a few others in your community or in your organization. The next community practice is next Tuesday, and we're going to focus on how to engage residents in specific practices that enhance their capacity for mental wellness and resilience. And Dr. Everett Worthington is going to join us to focus on how you can run forgiveness campaigns in communities. And also, I just want to put this out there now. We already had one open session that I think people really enjoyed. Are you interested in one more open session? This time, Thursday, December 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Time, but it's probably too late for those of you in the UK or Europe to join, but you're welcome to join after that. If you are interested, we could tape this one. Peg will send you an email about that, asking if we get enough people, we'll schedule that. So with that, again, I want to thank Elaine for joining us. Thank you very much. And I want to thank you all for being with us today and wish you all an extremely good week. And we'll see you all next week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Bob and Elaine. Bye.